I didn't realize I was muted. But buenas tardes, bienvenidos a ¿Qué pasa, mujer? Good afternoon. Welcome to ¿Qué pasa, mujer? Estamos contentos que están con nosotros hoy, otro domingo a las 4 de la tarde. Estamos aquí todos los domingos a las 4 de la tarde. We're here every Sunday at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Nosotros hablamos de diferentes temas aquí. Hemos hablado de finanzas, de comunicación, de familias, de negocios, de temas legales, de salud mental, de ser papá, ser mamá, emprendedores, de unas diferentes fases de temas que hemos tenido aquí en ¿Qué pasa, mujer? Ya llevamos aquí como 2 años y medio. So we've been doing the show for about 2.5 years. And we just discuss a little bit of everything, finances, family, relationships, business, race, of course, is one of the things that we talk about. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We have a special guest. But we just want to touch bases with everyone to see if, in reference to our goals, we've been talking about setting goals. And today is March the 30th, and it is the last Sunday of the month of March. So we want to make sure that we stay in tune with our goals and our dates and our deadlines. Nick Day and Maddie are not here today, so it's just going to be myself and our special guest today. But we're going to be talking about race. And as we talk about race, we just want to get information, have you think about why this is happening, why did it happen, why does it happen, and how do we evolve from the stereotypes that we live in. So again, that could be one of the goals. It could be a personal, Maddie's always talking about education. So we can talk about one of the personal goals could be, let me educate myself a little bit more so I can be educated and so that I can educate other people in my circle, which your circle could be your family members, your friends, your actual children, or the young people that you might come in contact with. Just because it's just such an important topic that a lot of us don't talk about, and it is very important because it's something that just stays with us for years and years. So it's important for us to just kind of like dig into it, find out where it comes from, find out where we are with it today, and how do we want it to evolve, which is part of setting goals as well. So whether we're trying to open up our own business, or we want to lose weight, or we want to start to dress different, or we want to do something different with our children. I know for me personally, I have a friend of mine asked me to write down some goals, and it was separated into different categories. So in reference to my personal life, my family life, my business life, and my education life. So one of the things that I put under family was being able to explore something new on a monthly basis. I don't want to say a weekly basis because that might be too much. We do want our goals to be real, our goals to be realistic. So we have talked about whether you go to a new movie theater, or go to a new museum, or go to a different kind of restaurant. Like, I'm big on trying new things. So you can say, I've experienced it, I like it, I didn't like it. And then you can share your experience with other people as well, which I think it's like the core of my life, that I live my life and I have these different experiences, but I'm big on not hoarding those experiences and really exploring them with other people. So that's me personally. But that's one of the things that I had as a family goal, is introducing myself to new experiences, but also for my son as well, especially my younger son, since my older one is, kind of like on his own path at the moment. So he's exploring his own and coming up with his own goals as well. But what we're going to talk about today is the term colorism. And as soon as our guest gets here, I guess we'll bring her on. But this is a really hot topic for me. We've had a guest in the past that talked to us about circles. I don't know if a lot of you remember, but her name is Michelle. And Michelle does a lot of social justice work everywhere in the United States. She currently does a lot of work in New York. I believe that's her home base, but she does a lot of work when it comes to the circles. So just to explain the circles to you a little bit, circles is a indigenous tradition of a circle, just like it sounds, like a circle of people. So it could be family members, or it could be just people from the community that come together to be able to have transparent conversations. No judgment, no one, there's no leader in the circle. It's just everybody has a voice. They do have what's called a circle keeper, but the circle keeper is also a participant of the circle. So that's one of the things about the circle, is to create that balance, that there's not one person in charge and we all participate. Um, so one of the things, so we're going to talk about that, about colorism, and about our guest and I have been in a setting where we were able to talk about colorism in a circle setting. So we'll bring her on shortly. Let me just type in here. But yeah, so I encourage you that as you are listening to the show, watching the show, think about your own experience and think about how things could be better, because I think that we need to explore ideas to make, I guess, to make it a better place. That sounds, to make a better place. It sounds a little cliche, but so that we have a little bit more unity. I know we've talked on the show before that there's a lot of division within the Latino community, and there's a lot of division within other communities as well. This past weekend, I met a young lady from I forgot what country she's from, but she was just saying how even the people in her country are divided, whether it's darker people like the Afro people from her country, and then there's also the people that are more on the indigenous side, so they're in a different part of the country as well. So all of those things that we sometimes take for granted, but but it does happen, and even within our cultures. So we just, that's some of the things that we're going to talk about today. I think we're having a few technical difficulties, but we'll bring her on shortly. And again, I know that let's see, I'm just trying to get her to come live with us. But again, and I also want to take this opportunity before we move on, just to thank our audience for tuning in on a weekly basis. And I know sometimes people cannot join to watch us on Sundays at 4 o'clock, but the show does repeat throughout the week. And so we're able to, get comments and get interaction from our audience throughout the week as well. So it not only happens today at 4 o'clock, but it kind of runs throughout the week, and people can interact with us as well. What else can I tell you? So I'm trying to get in contact with our producer so we can bring her on. But again, we're talking about colorism. Colorism is something that happens, is a lot of the biases that happen within our own culture. So the light skin, the dark skin piece, like I hear it a lot. Maybe in other countries. I'm Colombian, so sometimes I don't get to hear it within Colombian people, but it does happen. We do have Afro-Colombians, and then we have the lighter skinned Colombians like myself. I was born in Bogota, so majority of the people in Bogota tend to be my color, maybe a little bit darker, but definitely on the coast, that's where we mainly have the Afro-Colombians. But I know sometimes I left Colombia when I was 5, so I didn't get to experience colorism in Colombia. I have seen it here in the United States when it comes to other countries. And I know we've discussed this before, how we might use certain race words like negrito or something like that, but we use it in a term of endearment, usually with Latinos. It's not something that's on a negative aspect when it comes to the skin color of somebody else. So we do that. But I have seen a lot of, I would even call it racism within a culture where they're truly divided in reference to the light skin and the dark skin within Latin America. So those are some of the things that we kind of we're going to talk about today that we want to alleviate, and we're going to potentially discuss solutions as to how do we get away from colorism, because it is something that does exist. It's been here for a while, and we're going to talk with our guest about where does it come from. And it's a question for our audience as well. Where do you think colorism comes from? Where does racism come from? How did you, when was the first time you were exposed to it? Before the show, I called my son and I asked him, hey, what's the difference between, what are the characteristics of a light skin versus a dark skin girl, for example? And he was just saying that it does exist. So there's actually a term like light skin team, or team light skin, or team dark skin. And so there's different characteristics of the light skin versus the dark skin females. I'm not sure if it happens in the male world as well. My son is 20, so in his world, it happens where they still label the girls as light skin versus dark skin in reference to their attitude, even the way they dress. So all of those things still fall into play. And another thing that I was thinking about as I was doing my research was also texture of hair. And I know that has been something of a big deal in the past, where people say, "Oh, you have good hair, you have bad hair." I think we even had a comedian to come up with a documentary about good hair, and how we strive to have media, for us to look like how media shows people to be. So, the perfect hour figure, or the hair to look a certain type of way, or the skin to look a certain type of way. I know for me, I have freckles. You can't see them too much on this show, but I do have freckles. And it was something that I battled for a long time. I didn't embrace my freckles, even though my mother and my dad had freckles, but it's not something that was discussed to teach me to embrace it. I had to kind of do it on my own as I got older. And I know even today, there's a lot of people that they will spray paint freckles on their face because they want freckles. So that's something that I kind of had to grow into. So I thought about the hair piece, the texture of the hair. I know sometimes when I was younger, I would kind of like want to do the straight hair all the time, but eventually I embraced my wavy hair as well. And I know Maddie has talked about that before, about the texture of her hair, and then the color of the skin. And then to think about some solutions, I would say, for me, and I would echo what Maddie says all the time, is about educating ourselves and also knowing the history ourselves. So I cannot talk to you about a certain topic if I'm not in tune with that topic. So I have to know my roots. I have to know the why, and why it was like that before, why is it now, and how can we get to the solution piece. So I have to educate myself first before I can educate my children about it, or my peers about it. So that's one of the things that we're kind of going to talk about. When I was telling you guys about the circle piece, so within the circle, we've had our circles about race. So we've been able to discuss about white people, Black people, Latinos, Asians as well. And come to find out, like, the Asian people of color tend to have other concerns or challenges compared to maybe Latin America, because it falls into so many areas of the world. But for us, for Latin America, we've been doing this circle with a foundation called Hampton Roads Community Foundation. We've had actually the director on the show before, but within this circle, we've met a total of 2 times, and our circle has been just with Latinos. They've had a circle just with Caucasians, and then they've had a circle just with African Americans. So those topics have been outstanding, and we can give you more information about that as well. But I think our guest is here. We're going to go ahead and bring her on as soon as Mark, our producer, brings her on. Just let me let him know. that she's here. And so it's been very enlightening to hear people discuss colorism, to discuss race from their own perspective when they were younger and how it affects them now, and how majority of the people want to unite people, to bring them together, to kind of show that we're one human race and color does exist, but not to be judgmental about the color. Um, so those are the objectives that we have with the circle. We actually do the circles. The circle that I'm a part of, we do it in Norfolk, Virginia. We meet once a month, and we do it once a year for a couple. We do several sessions. I think it's 6 to 8 sessions. But circles are done throughout the United States and even in other countries. So they have talking circles, healing circles, conflict resolution circles. I know Michelle, who was on our guest, she's the one that trained me for the circles. She created a sexual abuse circle. So in that circle, she could have different circles. So you can have circles just for the people that were sexually abused. You could have circles for the people that abused, and you can have circles for the people that have had to support either the people that were abused or the people that abused. So a lot of those would be considered healing circles. So training does need to be conducted, because sometimes with those extra hot topics, it could get a little heated if we're not careful. But I would definitely, it's definitely a great platform to be able to have those type of conversations. You could even do a circle um, with your family, in reference to a topic, maybe like a family decision, that something has to be made, a decision has to be made. So you could even conduct a circle within your family. And again, one of the biggest things about the circle, just to kind of give you a little bit of insight, we always have a talking piece. So that talking piece could be sentimental. It can have a sentimental value or not. But sometimes I think it has been my experience that is better if the item has sentimental value. So the talking piece should be respected amongst all the participants. And so the only person that can speak is the person that has the talking piece. So typically we haven't had any problems with it, even though within our culture, sometimes somebody makes a comment and somebody wants to comment on it, so there's no raising of the hand. So sometimes that has been a challenge, because we just want to talk when somebody makes a comment. But with the talking piece, it forces you to listen, number one, and it forces you to allow people to speak their thoughts and their ideas without any interruption. And then we can circle back, and whoever has the talking piece, then they'll be able to express what they want to. So that has been an amazing experience, because it has allowed me to be a better listener and be more objective when it comes to any topic. So that has been very helpful. Um, what else can I tell you in reference to the colorism? Like I said, there is some what we would consider maybe racist comments in reference to the light skin versus dark skin in the Latino community and other communities, in reference to how we judge them, the way that they dress, their socioeconomic status, their educational status. So we tend to judge, and we kind of want to get away from that. And I think one of the issues is because we might not have role models that look like us. And here in the United States might be a little bit more difficult, or just maybe just challenging, because I know, for example, in Colombia, um, we might have um, a role model, whether it's the president or just somebody. Hola, Olga. How are you? No te oigo. No te oigo. No, no te oigo. We're having technical difficulties today. No. So while she fixes that, um, what was I saying? Sometimes that's challenging because we don't have role models that we can see. No te oigo. Yo creo que si te quitas los headphones, maybe. No, no te oímos. I think you're muted now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we could hear you now. Perfect.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I had my earpieces on and you couldn't hear me. I unplugged them and somehow we went on mute when I unplugged them. And I didn't
Yes.
realize that. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you for being on the
I'm
show,
happy to
Olga.
be
This is
here. Thank you
Olga
for having
Torres. Yes. And she's been on the show
me.
before,
Hola.
so we're excited that you're with us today. We were
Thank you
having
for having me.
technical difficulties, so I, introduced the topic about colorism, and I explained to them a little bit about the circle concept and how you and I
Hmm.
have been working together on the circles. So we just wanted to get your input a little bit in reference to colorism and what does colorism mean to you?
Yep. Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I've been listening to you the whole
Okay.
time. And so I'm engaged already. And colorism to me uh, means being obvious about you noticing that people are different. Literally, like, and when I say being obvious is making comments about the color of their skin or the way they talk or the way they dress, so it's to me is more than the skin color. Sometimes colorism takes on a wide range of acts that shows that you are demonstrating, colorism. And sometimes it's something that you grew up with and you were raised with and you don't realize. And I'm one of those people who would rather think that that's the way it is as opposed to it's done on purpose. Some people don't realize, some people, not everybody, do not realize that they're, being very obvious about being in that space of bringing out colorism.
Yeah. That's good. And I think it's that, right? It's just the exposure.
Yes.
Um, when somebody talks, and sometimes they might not even realize it that they're doing it. And then it just depends who you're dealing with. But for me, it just depends on my moment and who the person is. But I can kind of put them on check a little bit, or just ask
Yes.
like a probing question, like, "What do you mean by that?" To kind of get them to, because it's not to make them feel bad or anything like that. I
Hmm.
think it's just to kind of bring it out to say like, hey, you just said this and it wasn't cool. I think I've mentioned it on the show before, but when I was in college, one of my professors, a white man, said, I was asking his opinion about my next professor for a math class, and he
Hmm.
said, you should pick this professor. He's black, but he's nice and he really knows his math, right? And at
Wow.
the moment I didn't catch it,
Mm.
but when I went home, I was like, oh my God, did he just say that?
Yeah.
But, you know, it happens all the
This-
time. And if you don't bring attention to it, then
yeah.
it's going to continue to happen.
If you don't mind, I wanted to share a little bit my family, right? My family
Yes.
structure. You know, um I- I'm married to a black man. He happens to be my high school sweetheart, the man I went to prom with. The man I married for 2 years, and our relationship did not work. And so we split up, went our separate ways, and 23 years later, we're back together. And I am more self aware uh, than I was then. Um, Fast forward 23 years, he has had a family of 5 children. And I was not a part of that, obviously, since we were separated for 23 years. But, they're all our kids. I'm in his life again. He's in my life again, and there are kids. And above all, there are all our children. So we have a total of 11 grandkids, right? People may seem like that's, oh my, that's a lot. But, I'm happy that it's a lot. Some people don't get blessed so many times, right? Either with children, which I thought I would never have, and then now with grandchildren. So our family is diverse. It is a mixed, family, and we managed to do well together. But there's still that sense of self discovery and awareness, that comes with, I'm not black, but I'm not white either. And I've always said I'm other. And I adopted that even more so with, something in the water.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like I realize now, okay, there is a space for me and I'm other. And so colorism for me, I didn't learn about it until I was here in the United States. When I lived in Puerto Rico, it was there, but I didn't see it because I was a child. I was only 13 years old when I came from Puerto Rico. And so thank you for letting me, share that, because I think most of the time you're in the space and you don't realize that it's happening around you. As an adult, I think there's a sense of responsibility, to absorb, to understand, and to seek out, answers and more knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's important because, like I was telling our audience before, when you're in Colombia, it's like everything is Colombian. We don't really talk about the color of the skin.
Right?
Sometimes we might use a term like negrito, but it's a term of endearment. But here, as you stated, we get to see that difference in race,
Hmm.
color, culture here in the United States. We don't really see that in Latin countries.
Right.
I was pulling up this document as I was doing my research. There's a documentary called Colorism in America, and it's called Shading Out of Our Heads. They have a lot of young people. I haven't finished watching it because it has several episodes, but the one that I always promote is one that's called Black in Latin America. So they
Okay.
kind of talk about, the color, and because a lot of us are not in tune, or we reject the color that is in us, being from Latin America or the
Hmm.
Caribbean. Like I know several years ago, I went to a play that was called Plátanos and Collard Greens. So it
Huh.
kind of talked about that. It talked about, and it was mainly Dominicans. It was mainly based on Dominicans and blacks, and
Okay.
how it's people of color, but as Dominicans, they deny their blackness.
Yes, yes,
You
yes. We
know,
heard Maddie talk about that often, and I love it that she shared so much of her personal experience that it makes you curious. For me, it's about exploring, and wanting to know more. So, when I hear things like that, it's like you want to go back and let me look this information up.
yeah, yeah. But this is so it's through PBS, and it's called Colorism in America,
Okay.
Shade and Out of Our Hearts. So this is out of our heads. But when they pull it up, it's a lot of young people, and they're talking about
Good.
light skin team or dark skin team, and how there is a difference between the two. And
Hmm.
a lot of the girls were talking about that they think that this is happening because they don't have strong role models in media that they
Okay.
can look up to that are dark skinned. A
Good.
lot of the celebrities are light skinned, or even if they are a little bit on the dark side, they might put, certain chemicals or lotions on their skin to try and
Hmm.
look lighter. So I think that's part of it as well. So I wanted to ask you, Olga, with you're a twin, right?
Yes, I am.
Are your sister and you, are you guys the same skin tone?
We are fraternal twins, and even though I look pale because it's winter. Okay,
Yeah.
she's the lighter one, and I'm the darker one. So she has straight hair. It's kind of in the summertime. It got reddish, like reddish blonde, straight hair, thick, beautiful hair. And my hair was, you know, just I hated my hair when I was coming up because it's not kinky curly. So it's a mixture of curls and waves. And some hair sticks out like wire, when you don't have any way, you don't know how to care for it and use the right products to complement, the swirls and the curls. And I hated my hair. I hated my hair so much that um, someone was combing my hair. It was my aunt. I used to live with my aunt, right? So she
Mhm.
was combing my hair, and I was complaining so much because it was hurting me so bad. and she made a braid and she cut off, like she cut my braid off. I never said that before to you, right?
No.
And because she was so tired of me and her hair, my aunt's hair was curly, but she was blonde with green eyes, right? So, because we come from, such a wide,
Right.
diversity, right? And so she did that. She did a braid because the thing is, I have thick hair. So I used to have a braid, and when I would run in school, that braid would hit me so hard. I hated that braid too, right? Because it was like so hard. And, I never even compared myself to anyone. I just had to deal with my hair. But I saw my sister's hair and I saw mine. And I don't know that I wished I had her hair, but I loved her hair. I loved
Yeah.
her hair, Yeah, I was never jealous of her, but I loved her hair. And I was like, I hated mine.
Hmm. Yeah, that's when you're talking, it makes me think of, because I think about role models and the things
Uh-huh.
that we see on TV and the
Right.
celebrities and the people that we look up to. Um, and one of the things, and that's why, like every show, I mentioned that Latinos contribute $3.5 trillion to the economy.
Which
And
is going up to 3.5 pretty soon, I heard.
yeah, 3.5 definitely. So, I mean, just the fact that we're in the trillions,
Right.
it's so significant.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that for a couple of reasons. When
Yes.
I got that statistic, I was like I felt good about myself because I know that I contribute to that number.
That's
Number
right.
one. Number two, I wanted to spread the word to as many people as possible so
Yes.
that they can feel what I felt,
Pride.
right? And for the non Latinos, I wanted them to know so that they know the value that we bring to the United States as well, right? That is
Exactly.
not just on the workforce, but it's also on an economic basis.
We are part of the economic, establishment and pyramid.
Yeah.
Without, we're like a leg. If it's a
Hmm.
triangle, we're a piece of that. We're a piece of the puzzle. We're part of it. And without us, you know, yeah, it's not possible.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, I say that because we have to empower ourselves.
Right.
And we do that through educating ourselves. So
Right.
whether, hey, color exists, like my skin is lighter than yours, like that is a fact, right? So now that we know that it's a fact, like let's not feel some type of way about having that conversation, that there is a difference or where it comes from, but to like really embrace it, that
Hmm.
to know, you know what, Viviana, you look good in orange, but maybe Olga doesn't because of the color of her skin, but to like turn it into like a positive
Positive.
aspect so that we can embrace it, so that we can say, you know what, and if anything, we have more things in common because we're the same sex, because we're females, not
Right.
because you're Puerto Rican or I'm Colombian, but we really have a lot of things in common because we're females, so I just think that's important. I also wanted to ask you, what are some ways that we can challenge the stereotypes?
Sorry.
You're fine.
um, I think being self-aware is very important, right? Because it begins with us. If we don't understand our makeup, if we don't recognize that we are different, you know, and wear it proudly, it's like a badge of honor. You walk around with, you impress people with just the way you walk into a room and you're feeling, not feeling yourself, just feeling like you belong there. You know, that feeling of belonging is very, very important. How can we empower other people to feel that way is to welcome them in, to pull them in, put your arm around them, literally, physically, verbally, emotionally, and bring them in. Pull them into the conversation. Here, I want you to meet someone. Because until you get to meet people, and we really have to do that literally sometimes one by one, until we get to meet people, we don't really know anything about them. And some people are so quick to judge by the way you look on, what your level of intelligence or whatever is. You don't have a PhD or you don't have a college degree. Oh, she's not smart. But some of us have lived some intense life experiences from which we have learned so much. So that emotional intelligence is a big, big part of understanding a coping mechanism and making people feel acknowledged. and that they matter.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. And I think we as parents, as leaders, community leaders, we just have to do a better job because a lot it goes unknown. Like we're just living life, we're just going to school, adding one plus one is two,
Right?
but then we don't really get culture. Like maybe we live in the culture, like we eat sancocho and we watch TV in Spanish, but those deep conversations don't happen. Did you ever have conversations like that, like when you moved to the United States with your family?
No, not really. Like you said, we were living it. So when I moved from Puerto Rico, I went to New Jersey. You know, New York, New Jersey, there's a lot of Puerto Ricans there, but there were also a lot of other cultures. So that was my first exposure to other than the Puerto Rican culture. Colombian, you know, there's a huge Colombian community, for example, in
Hmm.
Elizabeth, New Jersey. Although I haven't lived there in so many years, but it just has kept growing. I didn't
Right.
know anything about the Mexican culture. Nothing. I knew nothing except Cantinflas, you know, in the Mexican corridos and the old songs, you know, the Mexican movies, the soap operas, right? That you saw when when you came here. So what you saw, this is what you learned, and you sort of accepted that. Um, I remember the first time I heard a an Asian person speak Spanish with a Cuban accent, and I was like, "What?" I was like so disturbed. I'm like, wait. And I was like 15 years old. Says, yeah, there's a lot of Chinese that came to Cuba. And I was like, wow. And I wasn't old enough to like really, I was just like, wow. You know, so just exposing your kids to those things, you know, to the to culture. Like today I was at the Chrysler Museum of Art, not plugging anyone in particular, and they had el Festival de los Niños. Así como estoy all ronca and whatever, I'm like, I gotta go up. I have to go there and I have to show up and I have to support. And it was beautiful to see so many families, some Latin families, you know, there, and we had conversations, and you know, it was just beautiful, not just Latin families, just all the people that were there, but we were also enjoying a special exhibition that's there now from Oaxaca, and you know, just beautiful artwork that's on there until 5/11. So again, not to do a plug, but if you are in the area, please go to the Chrysler Museum and support. But today was about the kids, and there was so much going on in music, and it was just wonderful. And to see kids enjoying themselves, you know, it was like, wow, that's the kind of stuff that we need to do more of. You know, I like to enjoy things, you know, but sometimes exposing our children, our kids, our grandkids to things are not necessarily fun, and we have to, you know, maybe give them a taste of what's out here in the world, but then watch them, observe, and ask them if they have questions. You
Yeah.
know, you want to talk about this, what you think, you know, just have them say it in their own words, so how they are processing things, and then maybe help them, you know, understand without putting too much on, because you know, kids, you know, their level of understanding is different, you know, so we don't want to overwhelm them with information, but we want to expose them to things that are important to us and that we know are important for them to know and to see, so that they can start to develop that sense of belonging.
Right. Yeah, that's important. I think, like you said, we don't have enough of these conversations, and I just think it's so needed. Because we have like Black History Month, and we have Hispanic Heritage Month, and but I think we need to, as parents, not give all the control to the school system to educate our kids about the topics. Um, yeah, so I think it's awesome that we can do that. And I think more and more different cities and different states are becoming more culturally diverse.
Right.
Um, right, and I think too is because people are starting to mix a lot, so you have
Yes.
a lot of like I took a diversity, equity, inclusion class here in Hampton, and the gentleman was telling us about how the evolution of the census and how
Mm-hmm.
it has changed so much, and how Latinos used to be called Chicanos, or just they
Right.
only had Mexican as one of the boxes, right? So his big question is, what box do you check off? You know, and so it has evolved. So like colorism has evolved as well, and even like there's a lot of Asians that are really grasping or getting more knowledge that they're people of color as well, and that like they say it
Exactly.
out loud, you know,
Exactly.
because before they
Exactly.
would just check off white, or sometimes you have some people that check off white because they think that they're going to get more benefits, or something is going to be done for them. And I know one of the things that irks you a lot, Olga, is the whole concept of, I'm going to marry this white person to better the race. So
Thank
tell
you.
me a little bit about that. Why does it irk you so much?
You know, because there's history behind that. There's real painful history behind that phrase, which in Spanish is mejorar la raza, right? There is painful history behind that because the black race, it was being erased on purpose so that, there could be more white people in a certain country so that the Europeans would not feel, they were feeling a sense of, they were scared. Basically, they were scared that they would be overpowered because there were more slaves, and now free slaves and black people that were more free thinking than they had been allowed to be for so many years before, like clavitude, before, slavery was abolished. And, slavery was not abolished on the same day for everybody, or at the same year. It took so many years. Some places did it so much sooner than others, like in the Caribbean. Slavery was abolished before. Okay. Haiti is like a perfect example of how much they are still to this day paying a debt to the world because they were black slaves that liberated themselves. Some of them were already free slaves, but Haiti is paying a debt to the world to this day, and people don't realize why there's so much poverty. It's because you're black. And so these Latin American countries brought in and paid for white Europeans to come to their country so they can marry black or mulattos so that they can better their race. And so when Latinos use that phrase this day, it me hierve la sangre. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I try not to be, but it just it doesn't enrage me, but it really bothers me that they don't realize that they are, you know, they're accepting, oh no, it doesn't mean anything. Yes, it does mean something, and we need to take responsibility for that. We need to become more self-aware, and we need to continue to share that history. Critical
Mhm.
thinking is very important, and critical thinking is not a new term. Critical thinking has always been around. It's now being used against people, right? Who
Mhm.
want to share the truth, the stories, the reality of why we're where we are.
Mhm.
And it's like, yeah, critical thinking is not new. It's always been around. That's how, most people make decisions on a day-to-day basis on how to react,
Right.
how to be. Sorry, I digress.
No, no, no. I love it. I love it. Because so many people feel like you, but sometimes it's like the elephant in the room and they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah,
But I think if we can talk about it, it just kind of brings clarity, and it's just how you bring it up. Because I'm sure we all can identify with that comment in our
right.
families. Somebody has said it in our families. I know
Yeah,
for me, I can definitely say, yes, I've heard that. And when I heard it, I was like, what? Like, and I hadn't even heard the term before. The first time I heard it was from that person, but I automatically my face cringed
wow.
automatically because
You
I
probably turned
knew,
red.
yeah, I knew it wasn't right.
Right.
Even if I didn't know anything about the topic, I
Hmm.
knew that that comment was not right.
Right.
Um, so I don't know. I think it's about educating people.
Yes.
Is so important, and really and Matt, I wish Maddie was here because that's her thing, getting educated.
Yes,
Because
yes,
I can't tell you about Colombians or Afro Colombians unless I've studied it myself,
right.
and to have conversations with other people,
Mhm.
and then to embrace the culture of other Latino countries.
Yeah.
I know Nicte, she this year she started, when she talks about Latinos, she'll say Latinos, Hispanics. So she'll put the two in the same category,
Yeah.
just because some people identify themselves as Latinos, some people identify themselves as Hispanics. So she
Hmm.
just started to use the blend,
Yeah.
and I kind of started doing that too sometimes. Cuando
Yeah.
me
I usually do Hispanic slash Latino.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
for me, it just flows for me.
right, right,
And
yeah.
so, you know, I wanted to tell you, I don't know if I mentioned it when we spoke the last time, going back to, that colorism, right? So I remember I applied for a job one time, right? And I showed up to the office. I think I called in and I said, "My name is Olga Torres." I think I said Baker because I was married to my husband at one time, so I had the Baker name. And I showed up, and the person was like surprised to see me because they were expecting to see a white, German looking woman. Yeah, I had
Mm,
an accent, but they couldn't tell what it was. And then they saw me, and I'm like, wait, that was colorism,
yes.
and I didn't know it, but
Hmm.
just the look on the lady's face, it's like, wow. And I think I may have mentioned when my husband and I went to get married the first time and we went to City Hall, right?
Hmm.
The lady looked at me and I said, I'm Puerto Rican. She said, you're white. I'm like, I am. She was a white lady behind the counter, you know?
Yeah,
So she saw me as white. So that was colorism, because she was labeling me, right? I'm
yeah.
like, yeah, I was in shock. And I never forget that. I never forget that. Another example, when I moved I told you I didn't know about the Mexican culture, right? So I remember I lived in Rhode Island for a period of time, or in New Jersey, right? And we went to this Mexican restaurant, and I just didn't like the food. It was just gross. I'm sorry, right?
Mhm.
So when I moved to California, when I used to move to California, I was like, I was at the food truck, right? Office got up downstairs from the office, and I said, "What's green chili?" And everybody pumped the brakes on, literally, and looked at me. He's like, "Wait, you're Mexican and you don't know what green chili is?" I'm like, "I'm not Mexican. I'm Puerto Rican. What's green chili?" So even that, and then colorism is
Mhm.
also not just black and white, but also mulatto, mestizo, and indigenous. It's like in many countries in
Definitely.
South America, Central America, Mexico, there's a lot of racism against indigenous descendant people. Okay. My
Yeah,
husband
los
brought to my
indios.
for many years. Yeah. My husband brought my attention many years ago when I used to watch the novelas, right? The soap operas. He's like, why is everybody white? Where's the black folks? Where's the darker skinned people? And you don't
Yeah.
realize it because you're indoctrinated into this sense of we are all the same. We are not the same. We
Hmm.
all have greatness in us. And it's okay that we're not the same, but we are all more than capable of achieving our highest, level of success. And we are allowed to, and not, you know, detained or pushed, to the side because we don't fit the mold.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree.
Oh, I'm
And like,
passionate about this, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, we have to be because we've been exposed to it, and we've
Yeah,
experienced it ourselves, and
yeah,
we see what we've been through, and we see what other people have been
yeah,
through, and it's a real thing, and it hurts sometimes.
yeah, yeah, it
I've
does.
I've seen a video of young girls. It was a video I saw. They were talking about race within their school,
Hmm.
and so they separated the boys from the girls. The girls, they became really open, because they were, they started crying. It was easy for them to express their feelings. But
Hmm.
one of the girls, she was like, like, I've hurt going home and I'm crying because they're
Yeah.
talking about, because my last name is Rodriguez, they automatically assume that I'm here undocumented, or that, they
Mhm.
start bullying and start saying, your parents are going to be um, deported back to their countries, blah, blah, right? So it was a small group of young people that were in high school, and the administrator was there and somebody from the school board, and because they heard those stories, they're going to try and put something in place to eliminate those things. And the hurtful part too was when they had the same discussion with the boys never talked about their own experiences. They always talked about, oh, my friend, this happened to my friend. Like it was never their own story. Just because I know the differences between men and women, and how, just being vulnerable is different for men than women. But it happens. And this was a mixture of white kids, Latinos, Indian, Asians. It was a mixture of everything.
Mhm.
And even some of the white kids felt it when they were the minority in the room. They have felt that racism as well. Um, so I don't know what you think about
Yeah.
that.
It just
That's how you call
it
it.
just hurts. Yeah. I hurt, you know, for what kids go through these days. And racism is really learned behavior. It's learned behavior. And it's so ingrained in our, social culture that it's really up to us to be self-aware and to acknowledge, other people, to bring them into the room, to bring them into the conversation, and to, lead by example, and sometimes that's scary, right? And I think that's the issue with a lot of people. They are scared to step up and to be brave for others who don't have a voice. We're talking about undocumented people, right? It's more than Latinos. There's a lot of people here in the United States that are undocumented, but it's always like the Latinos and the Hispanics. Why? Because it's easier to come through Mexico, and there's a lot of Mexican Americans or people from Mexico who it's just easier for them to come here. But it doesn't mean that it's the only thing that comes, the only humans, that travel to be here in this country. It's not just Latinos, it's so many more. And the sad part is, like this is it $5 million gold credit or something? I'm
The
sorry.
gold card, yeah.
Right. Who's gonna pay? Who's gonna pay for that? Who's got money to pay for that? Talking about trying to mejorar la raza. Okay? That's all I'm gonna say. So it's still going. So
Yeah.
it's up to us to, if we don't know, if we're not sure, that information is there. That's what that critical thinking is about. You're
Mm-hmm.
self-educating. You cannot depend on the public school system to educate your children. You have to have conversations. Kids are so stuck on their, devices these days, right? I know we don't have a lot of time left, but it's up to us to take the lead, even if we're scared. There are people out there who are authorities on these topics and the themes. There's information out there. All you have to do is be willing to step up and be brave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very true. And again, it's education, and just getting out there, because I think life happens, right? So like
Yeah.
we go to work, we come home, we cook, we clean, and then it starts all over again
Yep.
tomorrow. But if we just have to be intentional about,
Yes.
even having a visit to a museum,
Right.
or just googling an event, or just saying, you know what, twice a year we're going to explore culture. I met a
Yeah.
young lady yesterday there of Mexican descent, and the grandparents still live in Mexico. And so the great granddaughter, they want to teach her Spanish so that she can communicate with the grandparents, with the great
Mhm.
grandparents. And then the lady that brought her aunt, I said, have you ever been to Mexico? She was like, no. She said, I never wanted to go. I never wanted to go because I would hear my parents say, when I was growing up in Mexico, like I didn't have shoes, or, we were hungry sometimes. So I think the parents themselves
Hmm.
gave her an image of the negativity piece
Right.
of how they were raised.
Because
And
that's
then
again,
now
that's
that
what they
she's in her
told them.
20s, yeah, now that she's in her 20s, she wants to go, right?
Um,
But I think we do that sometimes. Yes, like Colombia. Yes, there's crime in Colombia. Yes, drugs are real in Colombia. All of those things, right? But all of those things happen in everywhere, everywhere
yeah,
in
yeah,
the United States, all over the world.
right.
But I ensure that I show or tell people about the positive of it, because negative exists everywhere, positive
Yes,
exists everywhere as well. But I think
yes.
it's just giving that balance that yes, people get shot in Colombia, and you know what, actually probably less people get shot in Colombia because it's illegal to carry guns,
Than here in
right?
the United States, right?
Yes, in Colombia, only military or police officers can carry guns. You cannot buy a gun as an individual. So,
Yeah.
yes, are they killing people other ways? Yes, it happens everywhere, but we don't have gun violence in Colombia. And I
Mm,
think it's one of those things of somebody asked me this week, how real are those documentaries about Pablo Escobar and
mm.
about Colombians? And I said, they're pretty accurate. They're true stories, right?
Okay.
But it's part of the makeup of the country. And like Pablo Escobar, I like Pablo Escobar, by the way. My grandmother would kill me if she heard me say that. But I like him because I liked his the power that he had, that
Mhm.
he did a lot for the natives of the country. Like
Okay.
he sent out a lot of medical assistance to farmers that didn't have access to medicine.
Mhm.
He would send out doctors so that they could get care. He did a
Okay.
lot for the poor people in Colombia. I
Okay.
think what happened is he just got greedy towards the end, right? So
Yeah.
like greed got to him, but
Okay.
he had enough money to pay off the debt
Mm.
that Colombia had with the United States, with the World Bank. He had
Wow.
he had that amount of money, and so once they heard that he had all this money to pay off the debt, then he got killed. So I
Right.
just think that a lot of the times they have good intentions, it's just greed
Yeah.
gets in the way,
Yeah. Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Influences, outside influences sometimes. Listen, before we go, I know we have something coming up. I wanted to acknowledge my daughter, Ariel, in Colorado. She's my daughter through marriage. She is part Mexican and African American. And I have three beautiful grandchildren. Her husband is part Mexican and Filipino. So that's another three grandchildren added to the 11 that I have here in Virginia and one in New Jersey. So that's a total of 14, 13, 14,
Wow.
yeah. So I've got a lot of grandkids.
Oh
And,
my God.
I've struggled with listening to her sometimes and how, even within her own family, she was called names because she was part Black.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted
Yeah.
to tell you that I love you and acknowledge you. I see you. Thank you for
Great.
that.
I love it. Yeah. So I apologize today. We've had tech issues because even now we're starting to get some comments from our audience. But
I see.
Lili Matos is watching us, Nikauri Jackson, Valentina Rojas. And I'm sure there's other people. Like I said, sometimes we see the comments, so we acknowledge you because you placed the comments. But if you don't place a comment, we don't really know that you're there. So we
Mm,
encourage the comments so we can mandarle saludos a toda la gente que nos está viendo y escuchando. But
thank,
I love this topic, Olga. I
thank
so
you.
greatly appreciate your time. I know that we're both very passionate about it. We could talk about it for hours.
Yes.
Um,
Con un vinito when I
yes,
start drinking. Mark, thank you for the compliment about the red shirt. This,
yes, yes.
this right here came from
Mark.
Spain. A friend of mine gave it to me from Spain. These came from Mexico. And this that you can't see is from Peru. So today I was,
Um,
really honoring, all the different cultures that I admire and
and
would
these
love
are
to.
from Colombia.
Oh, they're gorgeous.
So
Yeah, we
these
have
are
to.
like handmade from the indigenous people.
Beautiful.
So yeah, I
Absolutely
love
beautiful.
I love the earrings from there. Like I go there just to get the earrings.
Oh my God. Okay. I'm gonna
I
put
love
myself
it.
on that list.
Yes, yes, definitely.
But thank you,
But yeah,
Jordan.
so we're our hour is up. So Mark is gonna put one of Maddie's poems up in a minute. But we love this topic. We're very excited about it. We want change to happen. We want people to embrace color because it's real and it's here, and we can embrace it instead of reject it. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. But thank you. I hope everybody has an amazing week. Mark, we're ready for the poem. So we'll see.
In 2008, actor Robert Pattinson got rid of his stalker who had been camping outside of his apartment by taking her out on a dinner date. He said, "I just complained about everything in my life and she never came back."
In the Netflix documentary, I Am a Stalker, Daniel Thompson was accused of 13 crimes. He proudly bragged about only being convicted of 5. He said, "I could get away with anything. I could treat her however I want." Both scenarios alarming, red flags waving all over the place.
Yet the male ego is as delicate as a bomb. You can detonate it with a simple
No. It's always, why didn't you just say no? Well, because no can get you killed. The entitlement of access for bodies that don't belong to them.
These moments where being a woman is as delicate as being a butterfly in a lion's cage.
You can be attacked for resisting or just existing. Women don't get the chance to date. The retaliation of having a stalker to complain about period cramps.
Inequality in the workplace
Sounds like some male privilege shit we know nothing about.
Our nose taken as guesses and the message can't get through to thick skulls thinking with the wrong head.
I've been that woman, minding my own tunnel vision business, when a sideline of sex-driven men crash into me with a cat cold and proceeds to anger, when gentle rejection shoots out his confidence like an unidentified object, ducking the bark and bites of a dog chasing after tails, demanding me to smile because I'm prettier when I smile. Guess I should smile bigger to show my face.
I've been that woman in defense mode, holding house keys between chuckling knuckles, ready to Wolverine claw the wolves howling at my moon.
We are somehow only seen as good, a prized possession. Men are natural hunters. It is as if they know the perfect moment to go in for the kill.
In 2022, 19-year-old Mia Marcano repeatedly denied the advances of the 27-year-old maintenance man at her job, only for him to break into her apartment and murder her.
And it's stories like hers that are more like a fucking tornado and less like a breath of fresh air.
It's more like survival where you kill or be killed.
Demanding for your right to be respected. This is the woman's dilemma.
Having to lie about relationship status.
Instead of saying you're not interested, this is the woman's dilemma.
Choosing fight or flight when approached aggressively.
Choosing brass knuckles over bracelets when his tongue berates me. This is the woman's dilemma. Since the beginning of time, women are seen as property. A man thinks he can own you, but we don't owe you shit.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
Good way to
Um,
end Women's History Month, right? Thank you, Mark.
yes, tomorrow is the last day of Women History Month. So April will be another, I don't know what we celebrate in April, a couple of things. But I hope you guys,
I'll be back to watch you and hear you guys.
yes, thank you, Olga. So I hope you guys have an amazing week, and we will see you next Sunday at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time with another great topic. Thank you, Mark, for everything that you do. Thank you, Olga. And we miss Nikte and Maddie today, but we'll see you guys soon. Thank you.
Are just so impressed with them. Like I said, we've been with them for years. I will recommend and refer anyone to them. We stand by A+ academics. They're the best.
A+ tutorial really did help me with all my grades. They all went up when I came to this place. And I would say I recommend this school to everyone.
So it's a really good environment to be in, especially for me because it makes me look up to my parents.
If you have students that need academic help, A+ Academics is the place to be. A+ Academics, what a great place to go for academics.
It's just a really great place to learn.